Okay, already. बाकीचे कुठे आहेत?
Okay, व्हायचं आहे.
स्टार्ट करो.
करते. Okay. Hello everyone, greetings from International Longevity Center, India. I am Yashoda and I welcome you all in this national level webinar series organized by ILCI with the CSR support of Ganda Chemicals Limited. Last time we had seen the importance of living will, which was wonderfully explained by Dr. Kanagasabai. Today we are going to learn more about our favorite topic, healthy nutrition of the older adults. We have Dr. Anita Thippai from Hyderabad with us. Welcome, ma'am. I will now introduce her to you and then we will begin the session. Dr. Anita has done MBBS, MD, and then postgraduate diploma in hospital and healthcare management from Delhi. She has done masters in public health in the field of maternal and child health from the University of South Florida, Tampa, USA. She is currently working as an associate professor in the School of Medical Sciences, University of Hyderabad. Her area of expertise lies in public health policy, management, food systems, nutrition, public health education and research, occupational and environmental health, health inequity, gender and health, and also RMNCH A+, that is reproductive, maternal, newborn, child and adolescent health. She has taught public health nutrition at undergraduate, graduate, and postgraduate level. Also, environmental and occupational health and RCH, that is reproductive and child health, at various levels. She has published many research papers in renowned journals, and she is a supervisor for PhD students. She has been a part of many projects as principal investigator, that is PI and co-PI, funded by esteemed sponsors like UNICEF, DBT, Government of India, and Government of Andhra Pradesh. She was awarded IUSSTF PHFI Research Fellowship funded to research on the topic One Health Approach Towards Food Safety for Prevention of Foodborne Diseases by Department of Science and Technology, Government of India in 2013-14. Earlier, she has received scholarship by Royal Society of Public Health in 2012, and she also has received an award from Australian Leadership Award Fellowship in 2011. So that's an amazing and interesting profile. So thank you so much, ma'am, for joining us today. And I request you to please begin the session. Thank you.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Greetings from Hyderabad and University of Hyderabad. Actually, it's been raining here and I hope we have internet connectivity. Just confirm if I'm audible to all.
Yes, ma'am, you're audible. Have you purposely stopped your video, ma'am, for the range?
1 second, I'll get it started. That was by mistake. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All good, ma'am.
Okay. So first and foremost, I thank the International Longevity Center, India Pune Center, for having invited me to give a talk on this very important issue of nutrition in the elderly. And I also thank Dr. Anjali Radhe ma'am for having remembered me and thought of me to give a talk on this topic. And I thank the director you know, it's my pleasure to talk about it. And I must acknowledge the fact that many of you in the audience are very well versed with the topic of nutrition, probably much more than me. And it hopefully generates a discussion around this neglected area, I would say. So due to technical issues, I request Ms. Yashoda to share the screen. and accordingly, I will, give my talk. So at the outset, I would like to make a disclaimer here that I'm not going to get into the specifics of nutrition and diet in specific cases like diabetes or hypertension or patients on dialysis and so on. That area will be covered in a separate realm, separate domain of therapeutic nutrition. What I'm going to present here today is a general nutrition status of the elderly and how we have to work towards the nutrition, not just in the older age group, but we have to start building the foundation right from earlier days. So, Ms. Yashoda, if you can go on to the presentation. Yeah, firstly, we have to imagine the magnitude of elderly population in our country in order to advocate for specific nutrition issues among the elderly. So we know that the geriatric population um, in our country is gradually rising, and it was around 5.3% in the year 1980, which went up to 7.7%. And now in next 3 to 4 years, it is expected to go to 13.3%, that is 1.2 billion. And nearly 71% of the developing world comprise elderly population. This amounts to 70 million population in India, and this was the scenario way back in the beginning of this millennium. But by 2025, it will be around 177 million people who come under the elderly age group category. And interesting point is nearly 40% of the elderly people fall below the poverty line, and most of them are illiterate. The illiteracy level is high at 73%. Next slide. Ms. Yashoda, I think you're showing a different presentation actually, because I had sent a presentation yesterday, the final one. So could you
Okay.
open the final presentation, please?
One second. Ma'am, can you just please continue? I'll just check. Okay. Yes.
Yeah,
Just
sure.
one.
So primarily we have to look into the problems of the elderly, and we have to be aware of that in order to plan the nutrition of the elderly for a better understanding of things, and also to address it at a pan India level. Okay, the malnutrition status is really high, and this applies to extremes of age group, that is in the pediatric age group and the geriatric age group. While pediatric age groups get attention of nutrition, the elderly or the geriatric population is the most neglected one. This we refer to as silent epidemic, in the sense malnutrition is a silent epidemic in the country. It is ongoing, but it is seldom addressed. Only during the National Nutrition Month or National Nutrition Week, they organize some talks or some attention is drawn towards it, but most often it is neglected. And there are several deformities, diseases, or disorders which are present in the elderly, which we have to be aware of in order to plan the nutrition status among them. So if you look at the problems among the elderly, it ranges right from depression, dentition issues, dysphagia, dysgeusia. Dysphagia is difficulty in swallowing, while dysgeusia is loss of taste. And it also depends upon the various kinds of drugs or the medications they are using, and also about their the chronic disease status, which is whether they are hypertensive or whether they are diabetic and so on. And it also has the socio-cultural realm to it. What is the kind of diet they are used to right from right from beginning? What kind of diet they are accustomed to when compared to what we are advocating? So we have to look into these issues before we go into talking about nutrition among the elderly. So as I mentioned earlier, the elderly health problems, they range from heart disease, eye disease, to obesity, osteoporosis and gallstones, cancer, and also it touches upon the emotional component of it. Now, if you look at these elderly health problems, more than 50% of them are related to nutrition. The GIT, that is gastrointestinal tract problems, cardiovascular disease, hypertension, then psychiatric problem, also cataract, which can have implication on the cooking process and also the eating process. Next slide, please. So basically, the aim of geriatric medicine is basically to maintain the health in the old age by high levels of engagement and avoidance of disease. Hence, early detection and appropriate treatment of disease becomes important. Maintaining maximum independence is the goal, and there has to be sympathetic care and supportive care, especially so during the terminal illness. Next slide, please. So generally, when you talk in terms of geriatric team, it's always a group of, so-called clinically trained people who are involved in the care. And typically there is a geriatrician, there are nurses, there are physiotherapists, social worker, and a health worker. And I have highlighted nutritionist, which is a missing component. And I feel the geriatric team is incomplete without the presence of a nutritionist. So it is important to have a nutritionist in the team. And I also see that this is a major drawback, even when they are planning national, feeding programs like integrated child development scheme and midday meal scheme, whereby not many nutritionists are consulted. And hence that same problem is trickling down when we are talking about geriatric health or geriatric medicine as well. Next slide, please. So there are certain indicators which we have to be familiar with, and I would like to name a few. Like if we have information on things like what are the percentage of elders taking 3 or more drugs per day, and what are these drugs, such information will help us to plan better and to also know what kind of attention needs to be given in a particular community or in a particular geographic region which we are dealing with. And there are other indicators which are quite significant, and our vital statistics documents it, and the census report which is generated once every decade, they have age specific population which is living in that particular state or union territory. And also the proportion of elders who get admissions into the hospital also is very important. That shows the morbidity status in a community, and the morbidity and nutrition are correlated, and I'll come to it subsequently during my presentation. Next one, please. So while we are dealing with the elderly, it is important that we emphasize on certain screening issues. Basically, there has to be a periodic investigation, which is essential to diagnose certain conditions. However, over investigation and under investigation is to be avoided. And there are some interpretation of results which are important. While we say 140 by 90 is not a good blood pressure measure in young population, 140 by 90 millimeters of mercury is good enough for the elderly population. So the interpretation of results are very important, and accordingly we can deal with the elderly population. Non-invasive tests are preferred more than invasive, and the objective of the investigation is primarily to improve the quality of life, and with that aim we have to ask for investigation. There's a term which I would like to emphasize here, which is called as polypharmacy. That means a single individual is taking multiple medications at the same time, and this polypharmacy must be avoided whenever possible. So when an elderly approaches any health provider, basically, it's important that they reveal to them all the medications they are taking and what is the duration since which they are taking. So regular review of these medications is necessary, And if they are on certain medications for chronic conditions, poor drug compliance also is a problem over there. So while it is necessary to avoid unnecessary medication, it is absolutely essential to take the necessary medication. And medication without nutrition is not going to yield good results. We all know that. So proper nutrition is vital for healthy living, and a well balanced nutritious diet is ideal for older age. And it is not the quantity but the quality of nutrition which matters at this point in time, because we know that in children and in growing age, we emphasize on bodybuilding proteins. So it is for growth, and while in the geriatric age group, it is for maintenance. We consume food or nutrition for maintaining. So minerals and vitamins are the ones which get priority over macronutrients such as carbohydrate, protein, and fat. While it is essential, there need not be excess consumption of carbohydrate, protein, and the emphasis should be on micronutrient at the older age. Next one, please. So the nutritional challenges which we are facing currently, it is like the increasing incidence of weight loss, or it could be being chronic energy deficient, that is being underweight, and there is this protein energy malnutrition, which is termed as chronic energy deficiency. This is the term chronic energy deficiency used for older people rather than protein energy malnutrition, while this term is used in the pediatric age group. And the energy requirement declines as we are aging, and also there could be a reduction in body mass, and there primarily is reduction in body metabolism and physical activity. So hence the elderly are at risk of undernutrition due to several reasons, which could be they feel that the food is less palatable due to changes in the tastes and smell, lack of teeth, or there could be gum problems or ill-fitting dentures which make eating painful, or there could be reduced appetite due to lack of exercise, loneliness, depression, chronic debilitating disease, confusion, forgetfulness, and side effects of the drug, or there could be some habits like alcohol consumption or smoking. I would like to emphasize one thing over here, that during the COVID pandemic, there were studies conducted and they showed that rather than anxiety, it is the depression which affects the nutrition of the elderly. So if one is anxious, the impact on the nutrition is not, it was not scientifically significant, whereas depression, presence of depression, had a significant impact on the nutrition status of the elderly. Next one, please. So here, the kind of choices which we make is very, very vital. The healthy food choices positively influences the quality of life, and older adults are at risk of certain inadequacies in the diet, and that could be their poor nutritional status right from childhood to adulthood, that is going on into the elderly phase of their life also. Or there could be decreased quality of life, in the sense they are having more number of health issues to deal with, and there could be non-health issues also which they are dealing with. There could be functional disability and also increased healthcare costs, which may be having an impact on their nutrition consumption as well. And there is greater risk for morbidity as well as mortality in this age group. Next one. So we can look at the factors affecting the nutrition of elderly as psychological factors, physical factors, and others which I'm going to come to. So psychologically, there is declining digestion, physiologically, there is declining digestion and absorption capacity. There's reduced sensory perception, in the sense their vision is diminished, auditory hearing is diminished, the olfactory senses are diminished, and also the taste acuity is also decreased. Even the thirst component decreases. While nutrition is important, we should also take care of the hydration in the elderly, because less attention is paid to the hydration. And drinking water is such a common thing, but we often forget to drink water, or we do not realize the importance of water, and there is this external environment also which is playing a role. And there is something called as anorexia of aging. They don't feel like eating as they are getting older. That could be because their metabolism has decreased and there is decrease in physical activity, so the energy expended or spent is less when compared to what they take in, and hence there is no reason for them to feel hungry. There are other physical issues like chewing and swallowing difficulty, and there could be other organs and systems which are at play. There are things like the skin function, where there is skin a thinning of the skin which happens, and there is dryness of the skin, and these are some of the physical changes. And presence of micronutrient deficiency can also give rise to certain lesions around the oral cavity, making opening of the mouth little difficult. When you look at other systems like renal system, people could be suffering from chronic kidney disease and they may be on dialysis, which is when there is a restriction on certain diet, and there's a lot of fluid lost, and in the process even electrolytes are lost. There could be musculoskeletal disorders or problems and cardiovascular issues which restricts them to have certain kind of diet. So we have to keep this in mind, that physiological and physical processes are at play over here, and it's just not food or the visual appeal or the olfactory appeal or the taste appeal which is at play. Can you go to next slide, please? There are psychological effects, as I mentioned earlier. More than anxiety, depression had a significant association with nutrition and also weight loss. Loneliness is another big problem which is emerging as one ages. The social connections and the interactions come down drastically, because the cohort in which they were involved in growing up, in playing, in interacting, most of them lose that cohort, and that could be one of the reasons for loneliness. And studies have shown that more engagement with society, or if one is quite social, then their nutrition status is better when compared to those who are not as social or as well networked with family and friends. There is a problem of dementia also, and there are strong food fads. They have liking for certain foods and a strong dislike for certain foods, and that could be a problem as they get into this age group. Apart from these three P's, there are social and economical problems. You know that poverty is rife in our country, and there's something called as poverty among the elderly. Like if they have lived in poverty, it further exaggerates as they get older. And the social net, or the social security net and the safety net, is not quite adequate in our country, and that's something which we have to work with. And we saw that in COVID-19 situation, there were a lot of issues with transportation, with availability of food, and the elderly as such are not in a position to go shop, to commute in public transport, and the pandemic has only exaggerated this condition. Also, the elderly, while there are programs which are targeted mainly towards mothers, for enhancing the nutrition and health of their offsprings, there is lack of attention paid to the nutrition of elderly, and this also has led to lack of knowledge in the area of nutrition. And especially men, they have inadequate cooking knowledge. While we have famous chefs who are men, household cooking usually is done by women. And there are many men in our society who have seldom entered the kitchen. Even for a glass of water, they are dependent upon the women folk to provide them the same. So, and this has come in our culture in many ways. I mean, there's no distinction whether it is in South India or North India, but this often happens in many households. And as I mentioned earlier, there is decreased social support as one ages. Next slide, please. Cultural beliefs also play an important role. So provision of culturally appropriate food is very important. In our country, region to region, for every 10 to 20 kilometers, there is change in cuisine. There is a change in what is culturally accepted or culturally appropriate. So it's very difficult to design one type of food to this population or to any age group for that matter. And while the diversity is appreciated, it also poses certain major challenges. And as I mentioned earlier, just to emphasize, there could be medical conditions, there could be this poly pharmacy which is happening, or the elderly could be suffering from some of the medication side effects. We have to keep these things in mind when we are talking about nutrition of the elderly. Next one, please. So I like this slide specifically because it gives the multiple reasons why there could be malnutrition. So it ranges from our health system to weak public health measures, which we take, cultural practices, food availability, and also the socio-demographic factors like large families and so on. So to specify, there are non-availability of health services at sub-center level, PHC level, and community health center level, especially so when it comes to geriatric nutrition. And the immunization program, whatever little is available, the focus is more on immunization, maternal care, antenatal care, postnatal care, and so on. However, I would like to tell one thing over here. The presence of low birth weight at the time of birth, which is imposed with sedentary lifestyle during adulthood, can be a major cause for type 2 diabetes mellitus. So this was first put forth by an epidemiologist in UK by name David Barker, and this is known as Barker's theory, where it says low birth weight at the time of birth superimposed with sedentary lifestyle leading to obesity is a sure way of getting type 2 diabetes mellitus. So what happens in adult life has got much of its origin during the time of birth and around the time of birth. I want audience to keep this in mind. And also, there's complete absence of community workers which cater to this geriatric population. All the community workers which we know of, like ashas, ANMs, they Anganwadi workers, they cater much to the pediatric population at the neglect of geriatric population, I would say. There's non-access to several medicines at the PHC level and CHC level, and there are also competing priorities. In India, we have still not resolved communicable diseases issues such as diarrhea, dysentery, fever, and malaria. We oftentimes take it for granted that we have conquered these things, but unfortunately, that is not the case. Food availability is also a major challenge, and a nutrient intake, like the portion size, the diversity of food or the variety of food which is offered on the plate, the seasonality of food and water. I have visited some of the tribal areas where getting rice and dal, okay, dal chawal is a luxury. They get watery dal in the name of dal, and the rice which is cooked en masse. There's nothing called as quality. It could be very pulpy at times, or it could be uncooked at times. And this I have witnessed myself in remote tribal areas, the welfare hostels especially. Imagine welfare hostels which take care of huge population, providing such food. What nutrient can it add is the question. Even if they get a sabzi like aloo, the most commonly available tuber in our food, that is luxury for them. And this situation worsens in certain tribal groups, in hilly regions, and in some remote places where there is no access. Think of dry and arid regions where there is a non-availability of food. So the seasonality of food and water, which we take it for granted living in cities, it could be a far off access for some of the people living in isolated places. nutrition and health education, which is part and parcel of the activities to be undertaken at the primary healthcare center level. Again, as I said, is focused more on the pediatric age group than geriatric age group. Large families, here I would like to draw your attention to multi-generational families where you have young children, adults, and elderly living under the same roof. Now, the woman of the house, will she give priority to the children or to the elderly age group or for herself or for her spouse? It all depends upon those dynamics, and this is the reality in our country where we have large families and there are certain preferences within the family. Like if the head of the family is not eating or doesn't like a particular sabzi, that sabzi will never be made because whatever he says gets the priority. So the preferences within the family has to be seen. And there's also the issue of isolation. There are certain hamlets which are living in isolation, and they may be dependent only on those food crops which they grow in their field. So there is no exchange of commodities also. We have to look into isolation in terms of nutritional isolation, and also isolation in terms of when we are talking about psychological factors. Institutionalization is another thing. Like although in our context, institutionalization has not happened at a scale which has happened in the developed countries, this is an emerging issue. And the nutrition in the institution, if it is good, obviously all the elderly living in that institution get good nutrition. If there is a fundamental flaw in the diet or the nutrition ability which that institution can provide, then that carries forward to all the members in that institution. Mobility is another major challenge. It could be physical immobility, or it could be issues of transportation. Many elderly are not even in a position to walk up to a nearby shop and procure their daily condiments or vegetables, and this becomes a major issue. Even in the cities, I have never seen an elderly commute in public transportation during the so-called rush hour or peak hour. So typically, the elderly commute between 12 and 12 noon to 3 p.m. That's what I have seen. And that is a major challenge. And in this, in the busy lifestyle where nobody has the time to stop and turn, where do we place the elderly and his desire to access certain specific food? We have to think in these terms also. So malaria, waterborne infections, and diseases are quite common, especially in rural areas and even in urban slums. So we have to take care. If there is no safe water, there's no safe food. There's no question about it. So safe drinking water, we have taken for granted, but many of the disease outbreaks today rest with water contamination. I would draw your attention again on cultural practices, certain food consumption patterns. That's very important. There are food taboos. They classify food into hot food and cold food in some cultures, and certain food is not prepared during certain periods in the year. And there is also this fasting and feasting which happens in our culture, like fasting as we see in Ramzan, during Ramzan, and feasting as it happens during Diwali. And there are individual preferences, like some people don't eat on Mondays, Saturdays, and so on. So all these things have an impact on nutrition of the elderly. Again, unsafe and unclean environment is a precursor to many of the diseases. And if we are even eating adequately in unclean and unsafe environment, there will be problem with digestion and assimilation. So clean environment and safe environment is equally important in order for the food to get digested. So next slide, please. Yeah. While we focus so much on undernutrition or chronic energy deficiency, there is also a problem of overnutrition. But when we talk in terms of public health, deprivation is a major issue rather than over provision of certain things. But the non-communicable diseases, which I'll be talking about subsequently, they are making sure that you take care of the problem of overweight and obesity. This is called as OO epidemic or OO syndrome, overweight obesity syndrome. And the recent census and also the National Family Health Survey has shown that overweight and obesity is catching on even in rural areas. And overweight obesity is much more a problem among women when compared to men. That could be because we classify overweight obesity based on the body mass index, which is in turn dependent on the body weight of the individual and also the height of the individual. As you all might have observed, the height of Indian women is relatively short. So hence it has an impact on the body mass index as well. So, however, the women are becoming more overweight and obese at a faster rate when compared to men. And this also requires attention as it has its own challenges like metabolic syndrome and so on. Next slide. So you can skip this and you can go to the next one, Yashoda. Yeah, these are the three common diseases which we see in most elderly: diabetes, and what is more challenging is a particular level of blood glucose. Maintenance of that is important than having fluctuations. Having high sugar levels, then bringing it down suddenly, and then again going high, that has got serious impact on health than having a consistent, constant blood sugar level, which can be maintained by taking medications and engaging in a regular physical activity and having some control over diet. Uh, Blood pressure, raised blood pressure is another major challenge because there is thickening of the arterial walls, and as one ages, this hypertension sets in, and that is that is triggered by the fact that Indian diet contains much of salt, like salt is present in papad, parota, pickle. We don't realize that there is so much of salt in this diet, and we attribute increased salt only in westernized diet. But we have to be aware that normally the salt consumption in India is higher than what is recommended by World Health Organization. So World Health Organization recommends between 5 to 12 grams of salt per day, whereas in India, they are consuming even up to 20 grams of salt, which is very, very high. And there are certain projects which are taking place in small numbers, like Community Against Salt and Sugar, or such small programs, but they have not scaled it further up, and it is not commonly practiced because go to a restaurant, if they want to make the food more palatable, they add more oil, more salt, more masala. And this is a problem because in India we are accustomed to this. I live in Andhra Pradesh, and Andhra Pradesh is famous for its pickle. They consume so little of pickle, and the pickle is invariably made out of Guntur chili. Again, Guntur chilies are famous in this part of the country, and they have that with sesame's oil and heaps of rice, and there's no sabzi, there's no dal, and this is the poor man's diet, and it goes on. And probably there are origins to it when Mr. N.T. Ramarao was the chief minister, where he announced this 1 kilo of rice for just 2 rupees and so on. So what such political programs or political policies have done to the nutrition of the masses has to be looked into. And when we are talking about elderly, and I'm correlating it with Mr. N.T. Ramarao, so you can see that age cohort. So that's about the salt intake and hypertension. And also I would like to emphasize on another major problem in the elderly, which is osteoarthritis. Now, osteoarthritis is a pain between two joints, and there is loss of what is called a synovial fluid between the joints as one ages. So when there is rubbing of the two bones, there is excruciating pain. And the other reason is the muscles around the bone keep getting weaker as one ages. And in India, this problem is exaggerated further because they do not undertake any exercise which makes the muscles around the bone stronger. Having strong muscles around the bone is very, very important, and that can come only by resistance exercise. So, if the muscle is strong enough, even the arthritis can be controlled to a greater extent. However, in Indian setting, because of arthritis, they do not walk. Because they do not walk, they put on weight further, and the problem of osteoarthritis and arthritis increases further. So it is a double whammy. So that is something which we have to look into. And strengthening of the bones, that is something which doesn't happen in the elderly. That's because of loss of certain hormones in women, and inadequate dietary intake of calcium and so on. And there's something called as bone mass density, which has to be strong in order to have strong bones. And oftentimes it is these weak bones which can result in fatality, but this happens gradually. I recall seeing an ad during my childhood, जोर का झटका धीरे से लगता है. So that जोर का झटका, which is a fall, it basically comes during your middle age and subsequent subsequently when one is in 50s and 60s. So in order to prevent the fracture of the bone in elderly age group, we have to ensure that we make our bones stronger in our middle age itself. So we can't give a quick fix solution to this particular issue once they have reached the advanced age. Next slide, please. So there are these other factors which can accelerate aging, such as consumption of alcohol or excessive smoking, and also exposure to the sun, and the physical level of activity which they undertake is also one of the determinants. Now, if the elderly are in the habit of smoking, again, that cannot be stopped in that age group. They have to work towards it right from their middle ages. Next slide, please. So now we know that smoking is proven to have adverse effect on the heart, on the lungs, and also it can lead to several cancers. So cigarette smoking is the leading preventable cause of both mortality and morbidity in old age. And smoking is one of the three determinants which determine how the functional disability is in the old age. So the other two factors are obesity and lack of physical exercise. And the benefits of quitting smoking are immense. And though it is too late, it's never too late. I would like to emphasize on that point over here. And we still don't have any programs at the national level to help elderly to quit smoking. And also there is this issue of relapse of smoking, which can be present even if they successfully say that they have stopped it. It can trigger at a later point. So relapse is always an issue. Next slide, please. Alcohol consumption again. Now here, when a person is in the habit of consuming alcohol, they are usually having this washout effect. All the micronutrients such as vitamins and minerals get washed out. So if they are used to a particular quantity of alcohol, as they age, small amount of the same alcohol can also give the same effect as they used to have with 3 or 4 pegs. So one has to be careful about their intake. As one ages, the quantity has to reduce. The quantity of alcohol consumed has to reduce, but not going the other way around. And the symptoms of intoxication and withdrawal can be easily mistaken for diseases and age-related physical changes. So one has to ask about history of alcohol consumption, not only with the elderly, but they have to reconfirm it with family members at home. And the assessment of alcohol consumption can be through direct way or indirect way. And one has to ask for history of falls. Have you fallen? If so, when? Were you conscious or unconscious? And there are ways to elicit the alcohol issue among the elderly. Again, alcohol increases the depressant effect of certain drugs and analgesics, and if they are too much dependent on alcohol, they have to be managed at hospital, and there has to be nutritional support which has to be given, because initially what they do is, when they admit a person with who has been intoxicated with alcohol, the first thing they do is they perfuse some of the vitamins in the saline bottle or the glucose bottle itself. So depending upon whether there is hypoglycemia, they have to make that choice. And psychiatric support, either individual support or group therapy, would go a long way in helping such individuals. Next slide, please. Now, screening is very important, and every year it is recommended that the elders undergo screening, and that screening should be done for various issues such as alteration in bowel habits, onset of constipation, or any change in the stool size or blood in the stool. If they are having a lot of weight loss, and if they are complaining of low back pain, all these are the reasons why they should undergo screening. And the onset of screening typically should start at the age 40 years. And if you look at our non-communicable disease control program, they recommend screening from the age of 30. And that, although recommended, we really do not have human capacity to do the screening on large scale right from the age of 30 years. And women, especially over 40 years, they should be screened for cervical cancer, and pap smear should be conducted. And the incidence of cancer of prostate increases with age, and it may be asymptomatic. And also, there is annual rectal or digital prostate examination, which is recommended for all elderly men. They have to be cautious with it. And the vision, hearing, teeth, feet of older people should be inspected periodically for various reasons. Next slide. So nearly 13.3 million cases, they remain undiagnosed, and 50% of elderly in rural areas and 30% of elderly in urban areas invariably have certain disease which is not known to them or the family members. So making screening more accessible and affordable is a challenge. Hopefully the current health and wellness centers will play a role in doing the screening, and we call this as a iceberg phenomenon, or what is visible is only tip of the iceberg, and the larger portion of it remains hidden or submerged. The question is, whom do we screen? Because as I mentioned, the screening tools are not easily available for certain disease conditions. There are not adequately trained people, and also it costs money, certain investigations. So whom to screen? Those people who are having hypertension, those who are in the habit of smoking, and women who have had gestational diabetes. They should be screened ideally about the age of 30 years. Next slide. So there are certain guidelines when it comes to nutrition for elderly. So the plant-based proteins are usually partial proteins, and there are two different types of partial proteins which we consume commonly in India. That's dal chawal. So it's a complementary one where there is cereal and pulses. So chawal is an example of cereals and pulses is the dal, and that is what we commonly consume in our Indian context. And intake of complex carbohydrates and fibers should be increased. That is, there should be fiber-rich diet which we have to encourage, especially among the elderly, to avoid constipation. And also, dietary fiber can also prevent certain types of colon cancer. So we should encourage intake of complex carbohydrates. Simple carbohydrates such as sugar and its derivatives must be avoided or consumed in moderation. And calcium and vitamin D in the form of milk, curd, cheese, or fish, and certain green leafy vegetables, they should be increased to compensate for the osteoporotic changes which the elderly experience. Next slide, please. So, as I mentioned earlier, the salt intake should be limited, and certain foods with antioxidant property, they protect elderly against certain cancers and degenerative diseases, and these are to be encouraged, and this is present in spinach, orange, sweet potatoes, and carrots, which are available in plenty in our country. And additional supplementation of vitamins and micronutrients may be required in elderly, as there is higher risk of their deficiency. But normally in our diet, if we consume a balanced diet, there shouldn't be a deficiency of micronutrients which is arising specifically. Next slide. So I would like to emphasize here on physical activity. I correlate physical activity with nutrition. That's because once the elderly are physically active, the metabolism is likely to be maintained. I won't say it will increase all of a sudden, but at least it will give enough reason for them to build their appetite. And once the appetite is built, of course, they will be interested in food and nutrition. And as I mentioned, it's very important to have the muscle strength or the muscle mass, and a sedentary lifestyle will not help in gaining that lean mass, what we refer to the muscle. Having fat is not helpful, but having muscle is very, very helpful, and we should not lose the muscles. We have to maintain what is already there. Loss of muscle in old age is quite common, and this phenomenon is termed as sarcopenia. However, the rate of onset of sarcopenia can be reduced if one is physically active. Resistance exercise is important to increase the muscle strength, and there are certain tailor-made exercises which can be undertaken by elderly, which improves in balance and some elderly who are not mobile, they can do certain exercise sitting in the sitting position itself. Next slide, please. Again, avoid inactivity, physical inactivity at any cost, and physical exercise can take one a long way. And in the process, one may expand their social network also, and that is really very helpful. Next slide, please. So again, some yoga exercises which helps in flexibility, and doing this exercise, any form of exercise, nearly 3 to 5 days per week and between 20 to 60 minutes per session would really help the elderly in preventing many of the unwanted disease conditions or progression of the disease. Next one. So the key message is we need to have lean mass. Whether one is lean or when one is obese, diabetes is a risk factor, especially in our society. The Indian population is prone for diabetes and cardiovascular disease 10 years prior when compared to their counterparts in the developed countries. Smoking cessation at any age is very helpful. Increasing physical activity, and elderly getting some diabetes education awareness program, that will go a long way, and screening is very, very important. These approaches or interventions can be taken either at individual level, community level, or it could be at policy level. One of the best example of policy level intervention, I would say, is the ban on cigarette smoking in public place. At individual level, when one gets diet chart, if they go to the hospital setting for control of their diabetes or for their hypertension, that's a good example. And at community level, one good thing would be the the ICDS scheme and midday meal program, these are targeted at specific communities such as preschool children and school going children. So various interventions can be undertaken at various levels, which will prove very beneficial. However, for the elderly, we really have little in terms of large scale intervention. And this area is really crying for attention. And we need to evolve policies, and also we have to work with individuals and communities to improve the nutrition of the elderly. Next slide. So here is one of the nutrition screening tool. Actually, there could be a set of questions like this which we need to ask the elderly individual. Suppose they have answer like yes or no, certain points are allocated, and depending upon the points allocated, we can make out whether they are nutritionally adequate or inadequate. So there are 10 questions over here, and these can be tailored to the cultural context, and this is quite acceptable in most cultures. Go to the next slide, please. So it's the same thing when someone has answered, they get points. Like the first question, I have an illness or condition that made me change the kind and or amount of food I eat. If they say yes, this means there are 2 points allocated to that. Likewise, for other questions, there is marking which happens, and that is calculated towards the end. Next slide, please. If the point scored using this screening tool lies between 1 to 2 points, that means the individual is at low risk for nutritional deficiency. If the points are between 3 and 5, then there is moderate risk. And if they are greater than 5 points, that means the individual is at high risk for nutritional deficiency. A maximum of 22 points are possible using the previous screening tool which I showed. Next slide, please. Here there is another nutrition screening tool which goes by the name of mini nutritional tool assessment, mini nutrition assessment tool. And here also there are a set of questions which when calculated gives a certain score, and the scoring also goes between mildly at risk, moderately at risk, and at high risk. So we do have the nutrition assessment tools, but it is not frequently applied to the elderly. The only way is to apply it and see what is the nutrition status, and depending upon whether majority of them are adequately nourished or inadequately nourished, we can undertake intervention programs addressing this phenomenon. Next slide, please. So I would like to emphasize also on immunization, because immunization is a way of preventing certain diseases in the elderly. As the elderly progress in their life and age, the immunity, the natural immunity which they have acquired, that keeps decreasing. So there are specific immunizations against pneumococcus, influenza virus, against tetanus, against herpes zoster. So if the elderly, it has so happened that it's long since they have been immunized, they should consider these vaccines. This is not yet in the national immunization program, but there is a group which is working at adult immunization, and these are the vaccines which are available for adult vaccination. Although all these vaccines are available in India, only tetanus toxoid is affordable for vast majority of the people, and this is also given free of cost in the immunization schedule. Pneumococcal and influenza vaccines are expensive and thus are specifically recommended for those elderly persons in whom pneumococcal and influenza infections are either more frequent or can be dangerous. And there is a list given who are such people who are at risk: those having chronic kidney disease or nephrotic syndrome, those with chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, those with congestive heart failure or ischemic heart disease, those suffering from cirrhosis of liver, or those having diabetes. So these are the people who could go in for immunization. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, the malnutrition and weight loss, all elderly should be nutritionally assessed at least once a year and more frequently if weight loss or malnutrition are present. And mortality increases dramatically with unintentional weight loss. But unintentional weight loss in elderly is generally treatable and often due to depression. I'd like to emphasize that because it is proven scientifically and there is statistical significance, or it could be because of poor access to food or poor dentition or dysphagia rather than malignancies. So think of malignancies last, a common reasons more commonly and rare diseases rarely. That would be the dictum. Next slide. I think that's it. I thank you all for giving me this opportunity, and I would like to place my thanks to the director, Ms. Meghna Kher, and also I would like to thank my colleague, Dr. Mahadev Kalyankar, who has provided technical inputs to this presentation. And also I thank the elderly who have given me adequate inputs in the process of today's presentation, including my parents who are elderly. My father is 75 plus, my mother is 63. So, and I really thank all the audience for spending this evening listening to me, and I would be happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for a wonderful presentation. And it was a holistic presentation. You started with definitions and we went through that public health kind of scenario, the community elderly, and then specialized with diseases. So thank you so much. And now we are open for the questions. So any questions, please make hand raise or let me know in the chat box. Okay, so Dr. Kamal Chigri has commented in the chat box that we also insist on dietary counseling along with the replacement of teeth because she's a dental doctor. So yes, ma'am, if you have any questions, please. Dr. Mahesh Himadri is also okay.
Hello.
Yes, yes, Bhairao sir.
I'm age 68. My weight is 90 kg. What do you suggest?
What's your height, sir? What is your height, sir?
Height किती आहे, sir? Height किती आहे तुमची? What is your height?
165
centimeter.
So your ideal weight should be 65 because
it is 90.
So
what I should do?
What you should do? So probably try to take a little less of calories and make yourself more physically active, sir. That would be the best way. And this process should happen over the years. It cannot happen in months, especially at this age. The ideal weight, they say, should be your height in centimeters minus 100. Suppose you said you're 165 centimeters. Minus 100 means 65 should be your ideal weight. So you should lose probably around 25 kilos. That will be too much to ask for at this age. But over a period of next 2 to 3 years, if you're able to even reduce by 10 kilos, it would be good progress.
Body structure cannot be skeleton. It's a skeleton.
That's what she's telling.
Yes, you're right. Actually, we have to assess you. We have to find out whether what you're having is fat mass, whether what you're having is muscle mass, bone mass, and also, you know, the build is genetically determined, but environment also plays a trigger. Somebody asked me a question. What do I do, madam? Obesity and overweight is running in my family. I said, your family doesn't run. That's why there is obesity and overweight. So what I'm trying to say is you have to make yourself more physically active and also watch out on the calorie, the portion size of the food you consume.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, we have received a question in the chat box by Dr. Himadri. He's saying, what is the secret behind centenarians are found in Andhra Pradesh, more number of them, and they have this bowls containing rice bowls containing lots of salts, etc. So, what is the secret or what they exactly do?
So centenarians are certainly there in Andhra Pradesh, but I do not think that centenarians are overweight or obese. I have noticed myself the lean they are the ones usually who cross 100 years. And there's one old lady who has become very popular in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. She's a centenarian who comes on YouTube channels with traditional culinary food. You know, she's 108 years old and she teaches how to make certain, locally available cuisines and all that. She is 108 and still going strong. And she's really lean, but physically active even at 108 years of age. And imagine she's on a YouTube channel teaching her cuisines.
Right. Okay. Any more questions? Please let me know. Otherwise, we have already passed the time, so I'll make conclusion. Himadri sir, you want to say something?
थोड़ा
Okay.
Anti-carcinogenic. It is the ingredients used in making of the pickle, sir, which is anti-cancer. For example, turmeric, which is used in the making of pickle, that has got certain anti-cancer effect. So it is not the pickle as such, but the ingredients used in the pickle which have these anti-carcinogenic properties.
It was a great presentation, ma'am. Actually, I was just thinking that even in our dental scenario, we keep on telling that dietary counseling is very important. And whatever studies we have come across, even they say that dentists are more busy in providing treatment, whereas this dietary counseling that is being neglected. And they have even in our this thing they have told that even when we replace the teeth, that is we are doing some prosthetic replacement, so that is not sufficient. It needs to be complemented with dietary counseling. So
Absolutely.
it is a very important component which you covered. Thank you.
I'm glad you found it useful.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Shigli ma'am. Okay, so I want to thank Dr. Anita for giving such good inputs, and it was not just about nutritional support, it was about the whole community and how elderly should take care. And it was also useful for the researchers. It's not just about the elderly, but for the researchers also and for the doctors. So I really thank you for your precious time and wonderful presentation. And on behalf of our ILCI team, today actually Mrs. Raja is not available due to certain personal reasons, but I want to thank on behalf of my entire team and Mrs. Kher is here. I also want to note that this presentation was possible because of our generous sponsors, which is under CSR. We have received support from Ghada Chemicals Limited. Thank you, ma'am. And I want to tell to the audience that this presentation is available on YouTube. So please watch it later and share among your friends. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. And I hope we continue to remain in touch. And this particular area requires a lot of research, and we need to advocate for this group. So we are together in this journey. Thank you all very much. And all of you have a happy weekend. Namaskar.
Thank you very much.
Same here.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Yashoda. I will come off the meeting.
Yes. Sure, ma'am. Sure. Thank you.
Stay all.
Thank you. चांगलं कव्हर केलं नाही. छान झालं. खरंच छान झालं.
नवरात्रीच्या शुभेच्छा सगळ्यांना.
हो, तुम्हाला पण.
चला, बरं वाटतं. दररोज दर शनिवारी चांगला, शुक्रवार शनिवार चांगला मेनू मिळतोय, त्याच्यामुळे वजन वाढत.
थँक्यू फॉर जॉईनिंग सर.
थँक्यू सर.
ओके, भेटूया. काळजी घ्या. बाय.